Okay, so let's talk about an artist with a really, really unique story. Imagine a hip hop star who's a huge deal in one country, but is practically unknown in the place he was born. Well, that's the story of Chisenga Katongo. And his journey, spanning two continents, really makes you think about what home even means for an artist. So, this is the big question, right? This is the puzzle at the heart of his story. How does a rapper from Lusaka, Zambia, end up becoming this celebrated voice all the way over in Perth, Australia, while kind of flying under the radar back home? Let's dive in and figure that out. To really get to the bottom of this, we've got to follow his journey. I mean, it's a path that literally took him from one side of the globe to the other. And that move ended up shaping everything about his music and his career. Okay, so this timeline gives us a quick snapshot. He's born in Zambia in '79, but the real turning point is 1999, when he makes the huge move to Australia. A few years later, in 2005, his first album drops, and that sets him on a path that leads to this major award in 2009. So let's break these chapters down. All right, let's rewind way back to the very beginning. Because before he was an Australian artist, he was a kid from Lusaka, and his whole musical foundation was built on the sounds he heard growing up there. So even though he was growing up in Zambia, he was soaking up the golden age of American hip-hop. You can see his inspirations were the absolute legends. We're talking Tupac, Biggie Smalls, Lauryn Hill. These were the voices that really shaped his own style and what he wanted to say. And then everything changes. Act 2 of his story unfolds on a completely new continent. And his move to Australia, well, it wasn't just a change of address. It was the launching pad for his entire professional career. And look, this wasn't some random move. This was a serious, calculated step. In 1999, he enrolls in the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts, which is a really well-respected school. This tells you he was all in, totally dedicated to mastering his craft. And he did not waste any time. Right after school, he just started putting out music. You see a really steady flow of work here, from Officer in Charge in 2005 to Mr. Swagger, then Rhythm and Poetry. He was consistently building his body of work and making a name for himself in the Australian music scene. Okay, so we know he's making music, but what is he saying with it? This is where his story gets really fascinating, because his art was never just about cool beats and clever rhymes. It was always about something more. You definitely call his style socially conscious hip-hop. He's creating this amazing mix of African and Australian sounds. But the lyrics, that's where the real punch is. He uses his music as this powerful platform to talk about what's going on in the world. And man, he does not pull any punches. He goes right at the heavy topics. He's talking about corruption, poverty, the HIV/AIDS crisis in Africa. And through it all, he's always weaving in these powerful messages about peace and unity. His music has a real mission. Now, I want you to remember this year, 2009, because this was a massive turning point. This was the year that the impact of his message got recognized on a huge national stage. He was awarded the Australian Peace Prize. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This wasn't a music award like an ARIA or a Grammy. This was a Peace Prize, a major national honor for his work in promoting social justice through his art. That just says it all, doesn't it? All right, so this brings us right back to where we started. If he's got this powerful message, if he's winning peace prizes, why the huge difference in recognition between his new home in Australia and his birthplace in Zambia? You know, when you actually put the two cities side by side like this, the picture becomes crystal clear. Over in Perth, you've got 2 decades of him living there, being part of the community. He's performing all the time, he's getting featured in local media, and he's connecting with this diverse audience. In Zambia, it's just a different story. He hasn't been there as much, so there's less media coverage, and it's a smaller music market to begin with. So here's the bottom line. It really comes down to him just being there. That long-term residency is the single biggest factor. He's not just some artist flying in for a show. He's a local fixture. He spent 20 years building relationships and a real community around his music in Perth. But here's the thing. To really get who Chisenga Katongo is, you can't just look at the music. His impact goes so much further than what he does on the microphone. I mean, this guy is way more than just a rapper. He really is the definition of a multi-talented artist, and his work branches out into so many other creative and social areas. Just look at this list. He's not just writing lyrics, he's a multi-instrumentalist who plays guitar, drums, and piano. He's also a visual artist whose work has been shown in galleries. And beyond his own art, he's a huge advocate for education, working with groups to get scholarships for young people. You know, when you look at all these different things he does, it all ties back to this one simple, powerful idea. He truly believes that music has the power to change the world. And that's the thread connecting his songs, his art, and his advocacy work. So in the end, his story leaves us with this really interesting question to chew on. What actually defines home for a global artist like him? Is it the place you were born? Or is it the place where your voice, your message, and your work actually connect with people and make a real impact?